Welcome, everyone. We are live today. When the cock crows, you know that Bible story, right? I happened to be in a space yesterday on Telegram and showed a picture of my rooster, and somebody says, "Hey, but that reminds me of betrayal." You know, the Bible story. And as soon as he said that, I flashed right back to Neville's lecture with itty bitty Lynn, the little girl who wanted her bestie to go on holidays with them. And her mother said no. And she complained, and her father said, "Have you forgotten God?" So she remembers God, and then she got into her imagination. And then her mother said, "Oh, you know what? It'd be great if your bestie came along. You'd have company." That was number one. So she had to be reminded. So remember the story. When the cock crows three times, well, before the cock crows three times, you will deny me. You see, when we forget that we create our own experiences, we deny ourselves. Just so you know. And sometimes we need to be reminded. Sometimes we need to be reminded because we forget and we deny. Oh, I can't do that. I don't know that imagination creates reality. I don't know that. And we deny. And then, like Lynn, she wanted something else. And her mother said no. She goes to complain to her father, and he says, "Have you forgotten God?" See, there's two times. And she does it again. And her father, so graciously, he just asked her one question: Have you forgotten God? When we forget what we are capable of doing, we deny ourselves. Well, you're not denying me, are you? I'm not denying you. We deny ourselves. So the thing to do, we betray ourselves. Think about that for a moment. We only betray the self. See, but sometimes we look at betrayal as being wronged by someone, when in actuality, when we don't recognize or remember what we're capable of doing, we wrong ourselves. Because what do? We stay in the thing that we don't want to be in. We stay in the undesirable state that we don't want to be in. So, when you are out and about today, catch yourself before the rooster crows three times. What did you say to yourself? I can't do that. Mm. What are you saying to yourself? Catch it. The reason why it's imperative for you to catch it, it's the catching it that creates the change. Because it's showing you where the problem is so you can fix it. See, because we think, for some reason, we think we're broken, we think we're imperfect, we think we're not good enough. And that is a fallacy. You're perfect. You're perfect. You have perfectly occupied a state. That's what we've done. So it's not a matter of, oh my God, I'm broken. No, you're not broken. You're just in a state. Change the state. How do we change a state? I will tell it to you and tell it to you and tell it to you until you do it. Because sometimes that's what happens, right? Sometimes we hear it and we don't respond because you might feel like you're not ready yet. You might feel as if you're not ready. But the more you hear it, you begin to build something. You begin to build something more and more. That's what you do. And the more you hear it, The more you're intrigued, the more curious you become, and you start to say to yourself, wait a minute, maybe I can do this. Let me test it. Or maybe I can accomplish this. Let me test it. And so, this is why it is imperative that we hear it over and over and over again until we are bold enough to do it. That's the whole point. Because you hear it one time, meh, it could do something. Kudos to you if that's you. Some others may take 2 or 3 or 4 times. But the key is catch those thoughts as you get them, as they come in. Because what has happened was, what had happened was the thought came in and you conceded to the thought. You allowed the thought to just do what it would do without question. So you had to behave according to the thought. And that thought became your habitual thing to do. So now, through force of habit, you have to follow through with that thought and the action. But when you catch it, you say no. And you are disrupting the rhythm. You are disrupting the pattern. Why? Because you're creating a new one. So, in order for the new thing to become the old, you have to do it over and over and over again until it does what? Takes on the tones of reality, until it becomes real to you, until it becomes your habitual set point now. That is what we call persistence. But in order to persist, I keep telling you, you've got to be in love with the change you want. We've all heard the phrase, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Only the horse knows when it's thirsty. So it will drink of its own volition, not because you lead it somewhere. So this is what's going to tell you always that change comes from within. So there's no sense in getting upset with anybody because, oh my God, you're not changing. How about we help them out a little bit? Well, that would mean you've got to change the way you see them. Change the way you see them. Elevate them. See them as being whatever that thing is. Successful, bold, see them as that. No sense in complaining, because when you complain, what have you done? You've denied that they can change. You've denied it. And they can change if you see them as having the capacity to change. See them as being successful in their change. That's in one of the lectures tonight, Memory serves me correctly. Her neighbor would come over and complain all the time. And she'd tell her, listen, here's how you change that. But her neighbor was one of the ones who hears and hears and hears and hears, but doesn't do. Until, of course, Neville said to her, then change you. Right? Think about it, what it does. When you see that person as having become their best selves, you're the one who changed, not them. But then they mirror back to you because you have to harvest it. Right? So, when you find yourself in a situation, do not deny what you are capable of doing. Do not betray yourself and say, I cannot do this. I don't have what it takes. When we hear those things and we say those things, we act upon those things. It is the nature of man to behave in such a fashion. So here's how we fix it. When you catch yourself, oh my God, I can't do this. When you catch yourself doing that, you say, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. What am I capable of? Let me remind myself. Have I forgotten God? Well, God is within. Let me see what I am capable of doing. And you begin to experience in imagination what you would experience in reality if you had the thing you said you wanted to be, or had the thing you wanted to possess. You begin to experience that in your imagination. What would you speak like? What would you walk like? What would you cook like? What would you bake like? How would you walk your dog? See, those things that you would do naturally, you would do them anyway. The only thing that changes is your attitude. So, how would that be different? Begin to play it out. See, I know sometimes y'all might think I'm joking with this, but I don't know if you know who Durand is. If you've been on this app on fan base for any length of time, you know Durand. Okay? He said something very interesting a couple of weeks ago when I was in a room with him. He was saying to the audience, he says, listen, years ago I had already rehearsed what I was going to say if I was ever brought before Congress, because my app got too big, and they were telling me that, oh, I'm selling my information and blah blah blah. Listen, he has already worked out what he's going to say to Congress. So when you hear that he's been dragged before Congress, you'll flash back and go, oh snap, he did that. Why did he do it? How did he do it? Because he rehearses what he is going to say. He rehearses what he's going to do. He rehearses how he's going to behave. But why? He rehearses how he's going to behave because of his own inner conversations. I don't know very much about his life story other than Detroit. Now, Detroit doesn't necessarily have a great reputation. Shoot, we border that across from Toronto, if memory serves me correctly. Not a good attitude, not a good reputation. But he can tell you he was kind of sort of raised on those streets. So he knows a little bit about this and a little bit about that. But he has a certain mental conversation that he has with himself. He has that conversation he has with himself. And he refuses. How do I know he refuses? Because you cannot do what he has accomplished by browbeating yourself. I'm going to tell you that right now. You can't. He doesn't get up and go, oh, God, I got to go meet these people again. They don't even believe in me. He says, nah, here's what I'm going to say to convince them. Here's how I'm going to behave to show them who I am. They will bow to me. That's his attitude. Now, whether we like him or don't like him, that's not what this conversation is about. The conversation is about the inner conversation. He did not forget God. Whether he knows that he is God is irrelevant. That's not up to me. What I can only show you, they will know you by your fruit, right? Some people talk about their fruit, others don't. But if you observe without judgment, you will learn a lot. So, catch yourself. Because that's where you're creating from. Those hidden little conversations. And you see, the thing is, we have those little conversations so frequently, we don't know we're having them. We have them so frequently, we don't know we're having them. Because it's autopilot. We've practiced so much a particular way we speak to ourselves. That's why Lynn's father could say to her, he could ask, have you forgotten God? He was teaching her something at that tender age of 9. He was teaching her, wait a minute, you're complaining. You have forgotten something. You have forgotten that you are the operant power. As the scripture says, train up a child in the way it should go and it will not depart from it. That works whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So however you train the child is how they have to act. And this is what that scripture is telling you. However you train them is how they behave. So what are you training yourself to do? Don't judge whether you think you are good enough. That's not the point. Because you're right either way. If you think you're good enough, you're right. If you think you're not good enough, you're also right. Because it is the inner conversations. So when you deny yourself, see what happens to you when you deny yourself. Will you get a reminder? You know, the cock crows. Will you get a reminder? And when you hear the reminder, you'll go, oh, snap. I did forget myself, didn't I? And you'll straighten up and fly right. The next time will come. How many crows that rooster gonna have to do to get your attention for you to change? So catch yourself, which means we've got to be vigilant. If you're busy looking at yourself, you think you have time because you can't serve 2 masters. If you are busy focused on, wait a minute, what am I saying to myself here? And catching yourself and redirecting what you say to yourself. It was like my timeline this weekend was littered with Dr. Joe Dispenza, like for real. All he kept saying was, if we would get a hold of the emotion before the thing was physically in our world, we would experience the thing in our world. That's what he said over and over. I don't even know how many different reels or shorts I saw of Dr. Joe Dispenza saying that one thing. Emotion before the thing existed. That's what would make the thing exist for us. And so, you know me, I had to type in the chat. Experience in imagination what you would experience in reality if you had what was you wanted. Neville Goddard. Because somebody asked, well, how do you do that? And I thought to myself, replay the reel. He just told you how to do it. Replay the reel. He said, make yourself feel the emotion. Don't just stop at one time. Make yourself feel the emotion all day, every day. If you stop feeling it, go back and feel it some more. Go back and feel it. Go back and feel it. Why? Because within your brain, something happens. You rewire your brain based upon the stimulus that your body just did. Remember, cause and effect. If you don't know what you want, but you know how you want to feel, you'll bring about what it is that you want because it'll match the feeling. That's all you're doing. He's not sitting here telling you you're king of the world and you're going to change things. And he's not trying to inflate anything about you. He's just telling you, do this one simple thing and persist in doing it, and you will change your life. Remember, he is a scientist. So he's speaking to you in scientific language because that's what he does. So how many times do you have to hear it before you do it? Some of us have to hear more than others, and that's okay. It's not the Olympics. I'm not judging you on how good you think you are, how good I think I am. There's no judgment at all. The question is, have you forgotten God? How many times Is it 3 times before you remember what you are capable of? Because that's what the story represents. Before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me. So before your memory kicks in to say, hey, you know better than this. You know how to change this situation. That's the point that I'm trying to convey to you this morning. So before the cock crows 3 times, he is in the closet, by the way. So he might not crow yet because it's dark. So before the cock crows 3 times, did you deny your own power? Well, stop denying your power. Remember what Neville says. If you do not assume that you are the man or the woman that you want to be, then you will remain as you are. And you know we don't want to remain as we are, do you? No, we don't. We don't want to remain in that. In the stench of failure. We don't want to. So then, you know how they tell you, you ready, aim, and then fire? Actually, you get ready and then you fire. You have to do it first to know what needs to be corrected. How else will you improve the aim? You gotta know what direction. So you've got to fire, you've got to do something. And what are we doing? You see, we keep looking for the quote unquote inspired action, but the inspired action is what? To do what? To move ourselves from a state of wanting to a state of having. How do you move from a state of wanting to having? Because that's what we're doing. But we keep looking to say, well, do I go talk to that person? Do I go talk to that person? Do I call this person? Do I call that person? No, you don't do any of those things. You experience in imagination what you would experience in reality if you had what you want. That's what you do. Because from there, you can only act it out. You don't have to figure it out. You act it out. Because as Neville so beautifully calls it, a bridge of incidents. You'll be compelled to move. But that compulsion will come because of the state that you put yourself in. You see, we want to do the action before we get in the state, but the action is dependent upon the state. So then the thing to be done, the work to be done, is to move yourself from the state of wanting what you want to the state of having what you want. Or, in the phrase of Dr. Joe Dispenza, feel the acceptance of that thing. Feel that thing first. Feel it first that you have it. Experience the emotion. The only place to experience the emotion is in your body. So how many times do you have to do it until your body says, oh, snap, this is us? How many times do you have to do it? I don't know. But when you do it, you'll know, because it feels different. When you accept something and you know it, it feels different from not knowing it. I like how Neville describes this when he says it's different from waking up, like from a sleep, or recovering from a faint. I don't know if you've ever fainted, but I remember when I fainted in the grocery store. I wake up and, are you okay, ma'am? Are you okay? Would you like some juice? And we just called the ambulance. Are you okay? And see what I'm saying? There's a difference when you come to from waking up, when you went to sleep. But when you didn't know, when you hit a faint and you lose consciousness and then you come to, that's different. So that's the sensation. When you go from, I really want to, oh, wow, I have, that's the difference. They feel actually different. When you act according to what you know, it is different from trying to convince yourself. Two different things, two different sensations. That's why we practice. That's the work that we do. That's the inspired action that we do. We are inspired moment by moment to move ourselves from a state of wanting to a state of having. Because once you solidify the state, once you fully embody the state of having, then you have to see the evidence of what you have. And when you see the evidence of what you have, you say, oh, snap, there it is. So how many times before the cock crows will you deny what you are capable of doing? And the only reason why we doubt ourselves is because somebody whispered, are you sure? Do you know what you're doing? That's what happens, right? That's what happens. Are you sure? Do you know what you're doing? Do you think that's a good idea? And they make you question. And that's where that doubt comes in. You can't stop somebody from saying that to you. But what you've got to be is so in love and enamored with who and what you say you want to become that is the only thing you see. That is the only thing you think about. It crowds everything else out of your consciousness and you fully embody it. Then there's no hole in the hull to let the water of doubt seep in from the rest of the world. Right? That's what it is. Let us take a brief moment, shall we, to welcome everyone into the space. Twitter is completely replay gang today, but you know as well as I do, even if the room is empty, I'ma still talk. Because I listen. I hear me. Who's on YouTube and Facebook this morning? Well, who's in the chat? Sonic is wife material. Hey, hey. Chanel, Renee, Jeff, Anot, Asanya, Sugar Visions. It's good to see you all here on YouTube this morning. I don't know who's on Facebook because they haven't said anything in the chat. Who's on Fanbase today? Start at the beginning, shall we? Marquise, MG&E, Oracle Treehouse, Shay, Butterflow, Smiles. Hey, Ali, Happy, I see you. Hook a brother up. Stephanie, KZ, Dua, I see you. Summer Rose, I see you. Hey, where's Afternoon Delight? I just saw her. But I don't know, maybe she's working already. It is always a privilege to see each and every one of you every single day. Thank you all for being here. So remember, whatever that thing is, well, I saw on LinkedIn, I don't remember her name, but she did a post and she says, your boss is what? Gaslighting you and making the other employees not like you. And I was like, oh Lord, now. Your boss, he can do all that to you? Okay. And of course, I flash back to one of the lectures from Neville Goddard. Then the woman kept saying, it doesn't matter where she goes to work, everybody hates her. She was so convinced that if people were talking, they were talking about her. That's what she was convinced. She convinced herself that that's what was happening. Quite like this episode of The Mentalist, this guy, he was shorter. And so what Jane had done was he was talking to the other guy, and the other guy, he put his hand up to measure a certain height. And the guy who was shorter, he thought they were talking about him and laughing at him. So now look what happens. Now he got defensive. and they got into a brawl. Like they fought. That's what happens when we allow ourselves to be polarized. You think that somebody's talking about you, well then, because you think they are, you're giving them the words to say about you. So it's not that they don't like you. You think they don't like you. So as a man thinketh, therefore he is. So now that causes you to do what? You are in a state of what? Fear, because you think they're talking about you. What are they saying about me? They don't like me. Oh my God. Oh my God, they're going to make fun of me. They're going to, am I going to, see all the speculation you've just done? You see that state of fear? Listen, you can only act one way from that state of fear. You're going to get into arguments. You're going to have to defend yourself. That's what ends up happening. You can only act according to the state. So when you go to work, before you get there, how have you denied God, and how did you betray yourself? You betrayed yourself by having an inner conversation as an argument. Well, I know. I got to go see her face today, see his face today. Oh, can't stand these people. You've forgotten God. You've forgotten that you're the one who sets the tone. That's what you've forgotten. So how many times does that cock need to crow for you before you remember what you are capable of doing? And it doesn't just work for this situation and maybe not that one. No. One of the lectures this week is Life is for Acting. That's one of them this week. So it's not that it won't work for some situations and it works for others. No, it works for all situations because you are the operant power. So how do you fix it? You experience in your imagination what you would experience in reality if you had what it was you said you wanted, or you were who you said you wanted to be. And Neville says, here's how you do it. What would it be like if I was the man or the woman I wanted to be? What would that be like? How would I behave? And you begin to explore all of the possibilities you can possibly come up with. Mind you, there's millions, but we can only grasp so many. But you're going to come up with one of them. Once you've sifted through so many of them, one of them will feel the realest to you because it matches your personality. And when you come up with that one, now you say to yourself, okay, here's what I want to say. Here's how I want this to go. And you write the script out for it. What do you want to say? You're the actor, right? And an actor has a script. He has cue cards. So what do you want to say? And you rehearse your lines. The first step is to memorize those lines, right? Because that's what any actor would do. Once you've memorized the lines, now what's the emotion? Because you don't have to remember. You already know the lines. What's the emotion now? Because now you have to say those lines that you've just memorized. But how? In the most potent way that will convince you or the audience that this is real. That's what you're doing when you do it. You and I do this every single day. So practice. And listen, that just flashed into my mind, with the actor and the cue cards. Because that's what they do. The director goes, action. And they start saying their lines. And if the director is not convinced, goes, cut. I don't believe a word you say. Go back. Do it again. Pick it up from this part. I want to feel what it is. Make me experience this raw thing that you're feeling. And he starts to coach you through it. That's what you have to do for yourself. You are the director, the four mighty ones: actor, writer, producer, Director, it's you. It's all you. You play all the parts. So you go back. You say, okay, okay, okay. Remember, the director is not telling you you suck. He's telling you, convince me of this role that you're playing. Convince me. That's why anytime anybody talks about an actor, they go to Heath Ledger. And the moment I say Heath Ledger, you think Joker. Because ain't nobody did it like that. There's a reason. Because he embodied it. He convinced everybody that he was the Joker. That's what he did. That's the level of conviction you and I need to have as we rehearse our lines. Those lines are, what do you want to say? You want to say, you could be like Clint Eastwood. Remember, he says, do you feel lucky, punk? Well, do you? You know how he says these things, right? You know how he says it. So you could just have one line, but that one line that you say in that role that you play, that's what's telling you. Because when you act it out, you are putting yourself in the state so that you act according to what that state is. You see, I'm just giving you examples so that when you start scripting, because allegedly that's something you do in the manifestation community, you script, yeah? Why though? Because you're the actor, you have to memorize the lines. Once you memorize the lines, now get into the feelings. Because you already know what you want to say. Get into the feelings. That's the whole point. Yes, Marquise. When we deny ourselves, we have forgotten that imagining creates reality. Right? You know, you're so right, Marquise. Shakespeare, when Hamlet says, to be or not to be, that is the question. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you want to be it or do you not want to be it? Right? We move ourselves. Oh, Dua, you're right on it there. You're right on it there when he says the universal pause. Well, yeah, it always, because it has to, you're the one molding and shaping it. That's what it is. It's not a person outside of us, the universe. It's a thing that we mold and shape. The universe is mental. So we're molding it and shaping it. So if you're not persistent in that role that you play, you have hit pause. Yes, Dua, you're so on the money. Right? You're so on the money. That's why it's important. If you remember nothing, remember this. You and I are the operant power. Remember when Neville in last week's lecture, oh, which one? I don't remember. But, in the scripture, it tells you you can be angry, but sin not. Right? So when you hear somebody say to you, like your boss say no, or your government says no, you can get mad at that because somebody's imposing their will upon you. And you and I know, as far as the government goes, it's not always in your best interest. It isn't. You could get mad. Why would you get mad? You get mad at the fact that, whoa, 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 you want to impose that on me? No, I can create my destiny. So to sin not is to create the destiny the way you see fit that it should be, because you're the potter, remember. You're molding and shaping. And because this life, as we may look out onto the world and go, oh my God, this life is so tumultuous, reshape it then as seems good to you to do. That's how you don't, because to sin is to miss the mark. It means you did not accomplish what it was you set out to accomplish. We all do it. But catch yourself, don't judge yourself, right? And say, okay, what are my lines? What am I going to say here? What are the words I want to hear? What is it? What are the colors I want to see? What is it that I want to experience here? And you write it down because you memorize it. And then once you've memorized those lines, get into the feeling of it. And when you get into the feeling of it over and over and over and over, how can you intensify those feelings? Because remember, you have to convince the audience. Because you know how the audience can be very unforgiving at times. Boo! You know how they can be, yes? Think about it. Why didn't they boo? Because they don't believe you. So, the more you rehearse, which is your persistence in the situation, you are getting what? You're convincing yourself until such time that you don't have to convince yourself anymore. You just believe it. So that when the director goes, cut, print that, you got to shake yourself a bit to snap out of the role that you personified and embodied so ferociously. You got to take a break because it was so intense. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell us this morning, to remind us. I knew I saw you. Afternoon to light, I knew I saw you. But that's what I'm saying to you today. How many times does that poor cock have to crow for you to stop denying what you are capable of? And when you get mad, well, you're only mad at yourself. But when you get mad, you say, nah, I can do this. How dare I tell myself I cannot? Righteous anger. Let's get the bowl. Hey, I see you, baby. Yes, thick darling, I see you. Let's get the bowl and let me go and release this, my little rooster, my little roo from the cupboard. But as the bowl plays this morning, there's something that you are dealing with. I don't know. But remember who and what you are and what you're capable of. You are the leading actor. You are the star of your life. This is your life and you're the star of it. So when you hear this bowl this morning, reprise your role. What do you want that role to be? What do you want that phrase to be? Listen, you can only have one line in the whole play. Doesn't matter what that one line is. Say it with conviction. Say it like you mean it. Rehearse it like you mean it. Embody the state. So that when you practice and you do it and you do it and you do it and you do it, that is what your action should be. Moving yourself from wanting, which is, oh my God, I don't have this. I don't know how I'm going to get it. I really got to get it. To, what would it be like if you had it? And all of a sudden you see all of these possibilities. All of them. What do you want to say? What do you want that thing to feel like? What do you want to see? Well, then, see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, smell it the way you would. And embody the state. Become. That's what you do. That's how you move from wanting to having. You have to see yourself as being the thing to have it. Or else you're like, oh God, I can't have this. I don't know how to get it. Experience in imagination what you would experience in reality if you had what you wanted or you were the person you wanted to be. Why not? Why? Why? Because if you do not assume that you are the man or the woman you want to be, you will remain the man and the woman that you are. So this morning, get in there in your imagination and mentally move yourself by rehearsing what you will say. Make it nice and short and sweet. Like, Marcus, darling. Short and sweet. But let me tell you, you felt everything she said in that one sentence. 2 words. And she told you everything you wanted to know. That's what she did. Or the other phrase she was so popular for was, everybody knows who does that. And she didn't have to say a word, did she? No. So it doesn't matter if it's one phrase or one word, but the emotion that you convey that thing with is what will bring about the change in the physical world. Because as within, so without. Let me hit play. Double A. Countdown initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, sick girl, I see you. Thank you for being here. I'll see you tonight. 10:45 p.m. Eastern. Much love to you, honey. Twitter is closed. YouTube. Double A, hey, hey. Sonic is wife material. Chanel. Renee, Jeff, A-Not, Asanya, Sugar Visions. And for the others on Facebook, I see you too. Remember to pre-order your Hermetic Oracle cards. The link is in the description. Also, tonight, I'll see you. 10:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Much love to you, YouTube and Facebook.